Yo, 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 what is going on, RoK Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are going to be touching on a very interesting topic. This is one that is, I guess, a little bit of a hidden gem. However, it is very consistent with how often it happens in RoK, and pretty much happens in nearly every new kingdom that, well, spawns. However, it is something that is not regularly noticed, probably nor even talked about, but it is something that can actually impact a kingdom from its early days with how it could and can develop. And so that's what we're going to touch on today. And the topic for today is going to be restart alliances slash restart alliance leaders and what factors into that for what we like to refer to as the hoppers, if you will, or better yet, if I don't get number one, I'm just going to restart. Or if I can't progress into next zones, I'm just going to leave and kind of take my ball, if you will, and run. Before we get started, as always, if you enjoyed the content, make sure you sub, like, ring the notification bell, and if you want to be a part of our conversation, hit up the Discord, a link to that in the description, pin comment below. All right, so today I wanted, like I said, to touch on what we often see in new kingdoms, which is players that will join a kingdom, whether it's by themselves or if it's with a sizable group, but typically on average is less than a full alliance. We're talking more so about half an alliance worth. Sometimes it can be, 25 to maybe 30, 20 to 40. I would say somewhere in that range is what I often see, and usually on the lower end. And so what happens is that you have these groups that'll basically kind of alliance hop, right? They'll join a kingdom and they'll have aspirations. They'll make an alliance, right? They'll have aspirations of, like anyone, right? Wanting to power up, level up, try and break into the top 5, top 10 within a kingdom, want to try and progress from zone to zone, then eventually work their way to 3, maybe even just want to be the top, strongest alliance in the kingdom. Maybe they want to try and be king. But what I usually notice happens a majority of time is that most of these individuals as leaders usually do not get off to the best start. And because of that, they're kind of finding themselves in this definition of insanity where they're just circling the drain because they just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. And what often happens is they'll make the alliance, they'll try and progress, they'll flag out as much as they can, and then there's some stopgaps that end up happening where they'll run into other alliances. Maybe they're not the best at doing diplomacy or conducting that. Sometimes some fights may ensue. Usually these types of players are more often to be war ready in an attempt to think that that is going to solve their problem or that's going to get them going. Then you have a smaller portion of those players that may actually try the diplomacy route, but just due to maybe inexperience or maybe trying to do diplomacy from a position of lower status or not as much leverage or less leverage, they find themselves at a disadvantage. And due to this, it causes their progression in flagging and how far they get within zone 1 to pretty much stagnate. And due to that, they're not able to really kind of go beyond where they are. And after they start noticing that maybe they're not going to get to a zone 2 pass, or maybe they get there but they're getting pushed out, more often than not, they will decide to kind of, throw in the towel. They'll stop. They will restart. They'll wait for a new kingdom to come out and basically try it all over again. Now, there's a few things I want to point out here that I think are really important. One is that it's good to try and identify these players if they are in your kingdom early on. And I say that because the longer that you let these type of alliances hang around, if you will, be active, more specifically these leaders, is that you may come into a situation where that alliance is able to kind of go under the radar for a while, progress into future zones, and then eventually get to a point of maybe they actually get an alliance within the top 10, right, top 5. And it's kind of all about them, right? They more so will kind of either try, right, if they're crafty enough, they'll try and do just enough, do the bare minimum to appeal or appear that they are competent, that they are down with the cause, that they are a team player, a kingdom team player. And then far too often do I see situations where they'll progress in a zone, they'll eventually get to zone 3, and then it's just all about them, right? They want to be king, they want to kind of run the show, right? They're the top dog, so they feel, right? Or maybe they're in a top position. I mean, heck, let alone being the number 1 alliance in the kingdom. And these are red flags when you start seeing them, maybe say things like, "Oh yeah, we feel like we should have this zone to ourselves," right? Even if they're not a top alliance, or they are, but then they just start asking for more things. They kind of demand more things. You're noticing that they're not really going the equality or the fair or the sharing is caring route, but it's more about I and me. What our group deserves, what our players deserve, and heck, hopefully they don't get any top players or whales in their alliance, because then you might start hearing one of the worst things that I often hear, which is that, oh well, the whale needs a structure, or oh it's the whale, right? We have to appeal or appease to the whale. We have to make sure that the whale is taken care of. Right, because we have a whale in our alliance, they deserve the structure, or we deserve the structure because they're here. That's one I've heard quite a few times. It's so sad. So these are things, again, right, these one-timers, these kind of short-term alliance leaders. And what I will say, because, again, you know who you are, if this is kind of a category, a box that you fall into, is it's very easy to come out of this box. It's just a matter of educating yourself, being informed, trying to collect and get good information on how to improve as an alliance leader. Sometimes being an officer or a contributing attentive member of another alliance can really help in those ways. Far too often we just see players that want to start alliances and don't really take the time to kind of learn for themselves. It's probably a video for another time. But in this regard, those are some of the things I recommend watching out for, right? Paying attention to some of the responses you get. Just needed one to come out. And as far as when you're conversating with leads, you can kind of tell when you end up coming across leaders that may seem younger than others. When you're doing diplomacy and you're having conversations with them, sometimes age can be a red flag. I've actually had times where I've seen people that are young, but they're very mature and they have a very good understanding of the game, and they don't, you wouldn't guess that they were that young until you probably heard them in voice. And so, again, I don't think it's obviously fair to discriminate anyone, based on their age. I think, you can find, it's just a lower percentage chance, with older and with age, obviously comes more time and more experience and more knowledge you're able to accumulate over that period. So it's just a higher percentage chance that you're going to be able to run into or come across, right, more mature individuals just because of it being the numbers game. However, these are still important things to watch out for because, again, sometimes with not as much knowledge, with inexperience, that can come impulsive decisions. It can come not well thought out decisions, irrational decisions, and those can be detrimental toward your kingdom's development. And if you come across alliances, or more specifically leaders that are, again, in that mindset where, they want to be the top alliance, they want to be top dog, or they want to be number 1, or they just want to be a strong alliance within, as I mentioned before, a top 5, a top 10 candidate, or, all they're looking forward to is just progressing to another zone. It's important to understand that you hope that these individuals are going to have a game plan, that they're going to want something more than just being a top alliance. Because if that's all you want to be, is a top alliance, is the number 1 alliance, the king or queen, you're not going to go far, right? Because you're very one track minded in that sense. You haven't really thought about, what's move 10, what's move 15. You got a Bobby Fischer this piece, right? Magnus Carlsen, if you will, right? You really have to kind of think mid game and long game down the road, not just what's immediately or directly in front of you. And that oftentimes leads to, these kind of one-time startup leaders or these hopper leaders to just go from one kingdom to the next, basically just re-rolling the dice. And that's why I say it's very important to be careful of those types of leaders and individuals, because if they go unnoticed for too long, they may get an alliance that has a bunch of active players, and that can cause problems if things don't go their way or the way they want it. Who knows what type of, position that they're feeding these players for whatever it may be. I've seen situations where players have been fed misinformation by leaders or a leader in a top alliance, and that caused problems, drama, caused skirmishes and mini wars that occurred, kind of broken relationships due to that, really just caused a lot of challenges. I've seen this happen in a couple kingdoms. And so these are just things, again, to be very cognizant of and try to be on the lookout for in your kingdom. And this isn't the same thing to say that we need to turn into a witch hunt at all, but it is something I do hope that people are aware of. And I'm sure some of you may have even come across situations like this. Now, I want to kind of pass this question off to you, the community. Have you ever been in a kingdom where anything I'm talking about, whether it's one part, another part, multiple parts, if not all, have you ever ran into a situation like this with what I'm describing? Or anything, whether it's related to it, maybe it's something different, but it's closely related. Let me know in those comments down below. I would love to hear, what is your story, what happened, and how did it affect your kingdom going forward, whether it was extremely impactful, slightly impactful, what type of impact did it have? I would really love to know, because this is something I've seen quite a lot, and I'm just curious how many other people notice these things, and have you been in a situation similar or different than what I've described? With that being said, that is it for me. I hope you all enjoy as always. Until next time, I'll catch y'all later.